today. By now, you already heard the news. Polar Bear Pete Alonso is going to be back with the Mets. And on this edition of Mets Digest, we're going to go through some of the details which led up to Steve Cohen and company getting the deal over the line. Plus, we take a quick look at some of the Mets alums seeing they have new teams in the 2025 season. This is Mets Digest. What is going on, everybody? My name is Flobo Boyce, and I'm one half of the team here over the Mets Digest channel. Myself, alongside Mike D'Angelo, we work tirelessly to give you the news reports you need. In fact, Mike D'Angelo was the one to break the news on this channel that Pete Alonso is officially going to be a Met in 2025. But that said, if you're watching the channel and you like what we're putting down, do us a favor, hit us up with one of those likes, subscribe to the channel, and of course leave a comment. I do read them, positive or negative. Yeah, I'm a big boy. I can take it. All right, so like I said before in our opening tease, by now you've already heard the news. Polar Bear Pete Alonso is a New York Met, and we're going to go over some of the details that got this deal done, only because it gives us an insight about what the team looks like and what the front office is looking to accomplish moving in 2025. But before we get to that, not really much of a tease, though. Let's talk about some of alums of the 2024 and earlier season of the Mets finding new places to ply their craft. Tommy Pham, former Met, is headed over to Pittsburgh for a $4 million deal because he is on his 10th team in his career. Shout out to him. I was a Tommy Pham fan. And of course, A-Bay Bader just got signed to the Minnesota Twins. Got to get up to MLB.com, breaking the news. The Twins moved to another one of their needs this week, signing a deal with free agent outfielder Harrison Bader. The team announced on Friday Bader's deal, which is for 1 year and includes a mutual option for 2026, is worth a guaranteed $6.25 million plus up to $2 million in bonuses. That's pretty cool because whether or not you were a fan of the goofy nature of the 2024 Mets, Harrison Bader, I mean, he was a G, man. I mean, look, a lot of my friends bought tickets to see his midriff. Not really my thing, but I wish him well over in Minnesota. So yes, Pete Alonso is now back on the fold. He's going to make this lineup way more formidable than it was just a couple days ago. Alongside Juan Soto, you got Francisco Lindor, and you have some promise coming from both Brandon Nimmo to have a bit of a redemption year and Francisco Alvarez to have a redemption year. And this could potentially be one of the longest lineups we've seen ever. But it took forever. In fact, the last time I was on this channel, I was scratching my head. I was like, what is going on? What needs to be done? And so when the deal was announced, I was relieved. 2 years was interesting to me because it really felt like Pete Alonso wouldn't have gotten that 8 or 9 year deal under a past administration. But that was not to be very early on in the season. And even though that original deal, or the original short-term deal of the 3-year, $90 million, which was announced about a month ago now, was also rejected, this deal is interesting as well. So 2 years, so it's $20 million in salary plus a $10 million signing bonus for year one, and an option for year two for another $24 million, having it at a combined $54 million for 2 years. John Flanagan at SNY TV really goes into detail about how this actually happened. Because remember, at Amazing Day, it looked like the two sides were far apart. Nothing was going to happen. But then Steve Cohen decides to hop on a plane and go to Tampa to make sure we got some FaceTime with Pete Alonso in his camp. Check this out here. On Tuesday of this week, Cohen called for an in-person meeting between himself, David Stearns, and Alonso's camp down in Tampa to talk things over and hash things out. Yeah, billionaire tangs. Quote, I wanted to humanize the negotiations, Cohen told John Heyman of the New York Post. And the New York Post, to their credit, was the first one to break this angle. I wanted him to hear straight from me. Two humans having a real conversation. I was clear, I told him, I want you back, we want you back, end quote. That ultimately was the breakthrough they needed. As it became clear, Alonso felt the same way. The two sides were back in business shortly after. A lot of things to break down here. In fact, I'll keep this up so you can see the real quote. So, on paper, if the Mets were going strictly on analytics, they were right to not offer a huge deal off the gate. In fact, I don't think David Stearns would still offer Pete Alonso $30 million in a 1 year deal, or total compensation, $20 million salary plus $10 million signing bonus. But there is kind of like this like the show suggested, based on just billion situation, having a face-to-face conversation. And Steve Cohen took time out of his schedule to make that happen. And I do think once you get to individuals in the room, a lot of times the business becomes secondary. Pete always wanted to be a New Yorker, maybe for a degree of difficulty for his job. I mean, if you make it here, you make it anywhere. Or the fact the Alonso Foundation has pretty much ingrained itself in the community. He did see himself as a Met for life. And Steve Cohen knows the power of one or two things. Having Juan Soto on a team with not much of protection immediately is going to be one of those lull Mets things he won't be able to shake. And two, yeah, Pete Alonso really was a short-term torchbearer, flag bearer for the team, especially pre and during the COVID years. Why not give him a bit of a thank you? And that thank you is not going to be done in terms of years, but rather compensation. Because $30 million for one season of Pete Alonso, if he decides to opt out, I'm not saying he will or will not, is a lot. And it does kind of gives a little bit of a pivot from the strictly the here's your market worth and here's what you're going to get thing the Mets are really holding on to in January. This is definitely like a sweetheart deal as far as putting some extra stank on that first year of that 2-year deal. Before I continue, what say you? I know you have seen the news, you have the thoughts, but the idea of going over there face to face and putting a front loaded compensation package, even though the terms are small, to me, it's interesting for a bunch of reasons. Yes, there's that. But the secondary reason is Pete Alonso. It took him so long to get a deal that he's okay with. Not happy, but okay with. Does he regress and feel like this team doesn't really want him, or he felt like he was an afterthought? Does he play angry enough to try his hand at free agency next year by smashing and doing damage? Now, if he does that, the team benefits. But I always want to know the mental aspect of this, because at the end of the day, it's very easy for me to sit here in my room and be like, well, you got millions of dollars, bro. Now it's time for you to show and prove. But it's always hard when you have these things swirling, you have people in your ear, everyone's texting you, and all that jazz. In fact, Ken Rosenthal over at The Athletic kind of put this into perspective as far as what the team had to do, the Mets had to do to make sure Pete Alonso was back in the fold. He says, quote, Alonso's return to the Mets seemed inevitable. He clearly did not want to sign with the Jays because, frankly, who wants to sign with the Blue Jays? By the way, if you know about Jays Digest on YouTube, go over there and tell them Mets Digest is superior. But just as Boris got practically everything he desired from the Mets for Soto, the Mets got almost everything they desired with Alonso. True, Alonso's $30 million salary in 2025 will push the Mets above the highest luxury tax threshold. I think that was something David Stearns wanted to avoid, and that was one of the reasons why he didn't want to budge until this week, factoring the accompanying penalty. He effectively will cost the team approximately $60 million with this deal. So that is 60, and also on top of the $54 million compensation package. But the deal is for a maximum of 2 years, and the Mets lineup will be even more potent with Alonso hitting behind Soto. Not quite a championship or bust decision, but pretty dang close to it. You're 6 wins shy from the whole enchilada. You saw how the Dodgers reloaded on a level that we hadn't seen in quite some time. The Mets have to do something, to, even if it's more of a sentimental signing or re-signing in Pete's case. But that said, the lineup here is massive. But, though, that does raise the question about the alternatives. Remember a couple weeks ago when your boy, we weren't sure if Pete Alonso was going to sign. It was the idea of putting Mark Vientos over to first and opening up third base to, at first was Bregman, but Bregman won the long-term deal, so that wasn't going to happen. And so we were saying, oh, Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio, or someone else is going to be that third baseman to throw over to Vientos. Well, if anyone here is going to have to wade through dangerous waters, it's Beatty. Everyone's favorite Mets punchline, give or take, has now have himself in a little bit of a tizzy. At least third base looked to be open a couple weeks ago. Now, with first and third essentially squared away, this spring training is going to be one of the most competitive ones yet. Mind you, Luis Angel Acuna is still in the mix. Ronnie Mauricio is still in the mix, even though he's recovering from his ACL injury. This might get dicey. So if you're not going to watch the spring training this season, or this, which basically starts, the training starts next week and the games start a couple weeks from now, you are going to be missing out, because I really feel like there is going to be a frenzy to find some of the last bench pieces. Starling Marte is on the bench for sure, locked in. Luis Torrens, I would say Tyrone Taylor as well are pretty much going to be locked in the bench, but there's still one or maybe two spots left to be filled for the MLB roster, and of course a lot of guys who are talented, maybe log jammed and stuck in AAA. Last thing before I get out of here, kind of the obvious, Pete Alonso back in the fold. That means he's going to be in that conversation for the all-time Mets home run record. Shout out to SNY TV for the graphic. Basically, we're talking about 27 home runs separates him from greatness. It'd be kind of cruel if he hits that record, then dips. But that said, David Wright, one of my favorite Mets of all time, kind of my second favorite Met of all time, behind the GOAT, Benny Agbayani, is going to be the next one to fall, who is going to have his number retired, and then Darryl Strawberry, which, by the way, if you checked out the Mets sphere this week, Darryl Strawberry is actually looking forward to the possibility of having his home run record broken, because he understands when you own a record, it is something to have for only a finite time till you hand it off to the next generation. Bigger, stronger, faster. Pete's back, baby. Talk to me. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the deal. It would be a deal you would have done. What if you would have given if you were a general manager, assistant general manager, or president of baseball operations of the New York Mets? Let me know. I'm dying to read those comments. That does it for me on this edition of Mets Digest. I might catch some games in Florida. Why not? I got the hat ready. Why not? Bringing back some of the style. If you're going to hit up spring training, let me know in the comments below. Maybe you might have a Mets Digest meetup of something like that. That does it for me. Of course, until next time, it's LJM to the bitter end.